How much sleep did you get last night?
You weren't supposed to ask that. So we were firefighting a software problem all night last night. So I got maybe an hour or two of sleep.
But it ended up being successful. So
yeah. So at the end of the day, we shipped, and we always ship.
Welcome to Driving Change, where we go for a ride with leading technology executives and dig deep into their beliefs, habits, routines, and influences. Today we take a ride with Nate Ober, CTO of Questar Assessment, and discuss a variety of topics from leading technology, the changing assessment industry, rapid growth, and innovation.
Are you a coffee person?
I am a coffee person.
You are? So what type of coffee person? Are you espresso?
So I'm actually a straight coffee with cream kind of guy.
Okay.
I usually just like the dark roast with a little bit of cream in there.
Yeah. I used to be that.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to straight espresso.
Now you're
with a
pure
little
espresso.
bit of cream. So you're currently the Chief Technology Officer over at Questar. Can you tell us a little bit about what Questar is?
Sure. Questar is a K-12 assessment company.
Okay.
And so what that means is that we provide both online and paper assessments to elementary and high school students across the country.
How long have you been in that space, that assessment?
Sure. So
space?
I've been working in assessment for around about 10 years, and particularly in the technology portion of assessment for the last 10 years. So I started working at the Utah State Office of Education in 2005 and started building their formative assessment system back then.
Did you stay with them, or did you go or other places before you came to Questar?
Yeah, so after working at the Utah State Office of Education for a little bit more than 8 years, I went on to work at American Institutes for Research, or AIR, for a couple of years.
Okay. So you've been in the industry about 10 years. How have you seen the use of technology change from 10 years ago to currently?
Technology has really taken off over the last 10 years. I'd say that states are starting to use technology towards online assessment at a much faster pace than ever before. First of all, there's a lot more computers in the states than there have ever been before, so it's much closer to kind of a one-to-one ratio where students have access to computers.
Okay.
And second of all, there's been a lot more initiative to do things as far as assessments in a way that they can get back to teachers and to educators and lawmakers much more rapidly than they ever have before.
When you look at the EdTech space and specifically assessments that we're talking about today, where do you see the industry going in the next 5 years?
So I think there's going to be a lot more focus on formative and interim assessment than there has been in the past. What's
the difference between the two of those?
The law dictates that students need to take summative assessments at the end of the year.
Okay.
And that's how accountability takes place. The majority of funding from schools typically comes from the accountability process through summative testing.
Okay.
What formative and interim testing gives you is a formative assessment gives students and teachers real-time information about how a student is achieving at a certain point in time. So maybe a classroom lesson, or maybe the end of a semester.
Okay.
Whereas an interim assessment is used by districts to really figure out where a majority of their students fall, and if they're going to be prepared for kind of the end of level assessment that happens at the end of the years.
So when you think of innovation, you can definitely innovate in one space, and the other space is probably a little bit more handcuffed to what you can do.
Yeah,
Would that be right?
So that's right. So there's a lot more innovation when it comes to formative assessment because the rules around formative assessment aren't quite as sticky.
Yep.
The rules around summative assessment are very, very sticky, and there's a lot of information that's wrapped around statistical probabilities and essentially laboratory experiments going into assessment. So there's a lot more room for being creative in the formative assessment space than there is in the summative assessment space.
Okay. Now, Questar, over the last couple of years, has just had some rocket growth. What is it within the product or the company that's like really helping that projection?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One we consider ourselves a services-based organization, which means that we work very closely with our customers to determine what their needs are.
Yeah.
And we go to any length to make sure that the customers get really the kind of excellent service that they need. But more than that, our product is very configurable in such a way that every client really gets the experience as though they have a custom product, but at the same time it's usable across many clients. But I'd say what really differentiates us is kind of our focus on client, our focus on mission, our focus on values.
Oh, what am I going to get today? What do you want?
Yeah, could I get a medium dark roast coffee with cream?
I'll do a double shot of espresso over ice. All right, thanks. So do you make coffee every morning? Do you stop and get coffee, or?
I've got a pretty bad habit of stopping for coffee pretty much every morning at Starbucks. Yeah, I find that having the same sort of ritual every day is really important, right? So
yeah.
Eating something similar every single day, getting up at the same time every day, getting started with a cup of coffee, all those things are really important. And then I try and, I make plans for the day. I look at my calendar, I see, what's coming up. I try and plan the rest of my day accordingly. It just sets up the day for success, I think, a lot better.
Do you sit at the coffee shop and kind of plan your day, or do you just grab it as a drive-through?
Yeah, I drive through pretty much every single time.
Okay.
But still, that space, that kind of morning commute space, really helps set up the day. So at my last job, I had an hour and a half commute.
Okay.
And now I have a 7-minute commute. So in order to stretch that out and still, hit the ground running when you get to work, it helps to stop by the coffee shop and really take a minute to yourself, think about how things are going to unwind, and grab a cup of coffee. And for some reason, having a warm beverage just makes it all a little bit better, right?
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Thank you. Thanks, you too. You can just put that right there if you want to.
Sure, thanks.
So as the Chief Technology Officer and you're building your team right now, who are some of what are some of the characteristics of people that work best with you?
Sure. So a lot of the people that I'm looking for, and a lot of the roles that I'm screening for, are for highly technical roles. The three things that we really measure for at Questar are skill, will, and fit.
Okay.
So as we conduct interviews and as we're talking to potential candidates, we start looking for, first of all, someone's technical or job skills at what they're working on. As we're asking them questions about that, we're constantly evaluating whether or not they'd just be a good cultural fit. And some of the things that equal a good culture fit there are a good sense of humor and the ability to be kind of fast on your feet, highly technical, and be able to move quickly through problem solving. We've been around for 30 years, but we're still kind of a startup, right? We have
emerging.
Yeah, we're still emerging, right?
Yeah.
So we're growing really, really quickly. And so one of the things that's very important to us is what we call grit or just strong will, right? So someone who's willing to stick it out through some very difficult problems. And I think that's what you'll see in our culture a lot, is people who are just willing to do what it takes to drive the ball down the court.
How much sleep did you get last night?
You weren't supposed to ask that. So we were firefighting a software problem all night last night. So I got maybe an hour or two of sleep.
But it ended up being successful. So
so at the end of the day, we shipped, and we always ship.
Yep. When you think of advice, and maybe some advice or something that you learned, what is that one thing that you kind of come back to when you're thinking about leading?
Sure. So we have problems every day. We have, dreams of the things that we want to do. When I was 19, I wanted to be Steve Jobs, right? I think a lot of kids growing up around my age wanted to be Steve Jobs at the time, or Bill Gates. A lot of people gave up on that dream and moved on to other things. But I think it's, the number one thing of advice that I give, the number one piece of advice that I'd give to people is don't give up, right? So if you have a hard problem, if you're having a tough time in a particular subject in school, but it's important for you to get through that to do what you want to do in life, don't give up. If you have to take a class multiple times, if you have to, take jobs that would seem kind of unappealing to you, do that. Don't give up. Work through on your dream, and continue to put in the effort.
Looking back at your career, what do you think you did right to get you to the role of the CTO?
Well, so I think that what really differentiated me from a lot of other people in the industry is I had a lot of deep experience in assessment and a lot of deep technical experience in assessment that lasted about 10 years, right? So I was working at the Utah State Office of Education, and I moved around a lot in the Utah State Office of Education, and I really stuck to it and got to build some really cool products and learn a lot of things about the industry before moving on to other roles. And also my willingness then to kind of transplant my family from one place to another and to take on these new roles within the assessment industry, I think also propelled me to where I am today. So I think that a combination really of being a fairly technical guy as well as having a lot of business acumen and a lot of experience in assessment really put me to where I am today.
Has there been a change in belief, something that you thought about earlier in your career and now you kind of think the opposite of?
Sure. So, early in my life, I was a firm belief that, technology could solve all problems, right?
Yep.
So there wasn't a problem that I couldn't solve with automation, that I couldn't solve with even some degree of process, that I couldn't solve with some degree of, software configuration. And,
Okay.
And really what I've come to the conclusion of that it's more than about the technology. It's about the people. It's about building the teams. It's about team will in particular, right? Teams' willingness to do whatever it takes to solve problems. And there's always going to be a rich problem set out there. There's always going to be something that you've never experienced before. There's always going to be something that you didn't have the technology foresight to build. So the real question is, how are people going to adapt to that? How is your team going to adapt to that to make it so that you're successful at the end of the day?
Where do you get your information? Do you read books, podcasts?
Sure.
Where do you get your information for within technology and industry?
Yeah, so a number of places. Really, I get a lot of my information from the news. I read business magazines. I read a lot of articles on the internet. But also, honestly, I get a lot of information from trying to solve problems, working with my team to try and identify potential solutions to problems, and my team will go out and explore these solutions, and we'll bring them in-house, we'll talk about them, we'll figure out how they work, and really where they fit into architecture. So, Jeff, we found that in our recruiting efforts, the market is really constrained for technical folks.
Yep.
How do you see that changing over the next couple of years in Minnesota?
I think we're always going to have a shortage of technology people. I think that's really what we're seeing, and I think companies that can create a company that technology people want to go to are going to win. And what I mean by that is, are you working on the new technologies? Do you have a place that's a great environment for people to learn, for willing to take risks, letting them fail? That sandbox for technologists. What are the things that they like, and be able to bring that value proposition to them. So, will it ever catch up? I don't know. The pendulum's definitely swung to the side where there's not enough talent and there's high demand.
Sure.
And so now it's really about which companies are going to, really stand up and make an effort to give a great value proposition to those people to bring them to their company and keep them there.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if there's always going to be a gap. That's a really interesting question. Will that ever catch up?
Well, and so I guess the real question is,
I think there's going to be more demand.
are there going to be more people in STEM, right? Are there going to be more people who are software developers? Are there going to be more people in industry? I think that. But
do you think it's going to be more just people that are configuring software versus actually writing code?
They've been saying that for like decades.
Oh, really?
And it's never going to happen, right?
Okay.
So you can't imagine all of the possible ways that software will plug into itself.
Yeah.
Right. So what we do at Questar, and what you try and do at most companies, is you try and productize everything you build, right?
Yeah.
But what that means is that you've mastered a particular space for a particular problem at a particular time. That software will be replaced eventually by something else that solves a slightly different or slightly new problem, right? Some kind of new problem that you haven't even conceived of yet. And I think that the problem set will just continue to change, and so you'll always need new products to try and, it's like, will you always have one kind of car? Well, no. You'll never just be able to keep one geo.
Yeah.
Because people's ideas about what a car is change, even if they have four wheels and an engine, right? Like,
yeah.
The ideas behind what make up a car are always going to change. That's my opinion, anyways.
So for other technology leaders that are watching the show, what question would you have for them that you'd like to have them answer in the future or hear other people answer?
Sure. So the thing that always interests me the most when I talk to other technology leaders is, I love to hear about their vision for the future. I like to hear where technology leaders see teams going, where they see industry going, but most importantly for me, where they see technology going in a way that will make our lives better. So I'd like to hear, really what changes other technology leaders are making in industry that will improve everybody's lives. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Being on the show, and we'll talk soon.
It's great talking to you, man. Take care.
Hey, this is Jeff Martin again. If you go to leadbychange.com, you can see this show and other shows. If you subscribe, you can get early access to new shows and also exclusive content. Thanks for watching.